Welcome to season 10 of the Parenting Aces podcast, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we're going to be talking about early tennis development, speed and agility training, and what our young players need to be doing to ensure that they have the most positive tennis development journey ever. My guests are Gary I'm going to totally mess up your name, Gary. I'm so sorry. Gary Cablayan and Susan Nardi. Gary is a speed and agility specialist. He is in the Southern California area. Susan Nardi is an early 10 and under kind of ROG kind of tennis coach who works with our young kids to make sure that they get a love of tennis and a solid foundation as they start their junior tennis journey. And so having the two of them together, I think, is such an awesome opportunity. And I'm really excited to bring them both to all of you today. Before that, I want to just do a quick reminder. If you haven't become a premium member of ParentingAces.com yet, we want you to do that. Please go on our website and click the join button. Super simple, and become part of our community. Once you sign up, you have access to our Tennis Parents Only Facebook group where we have some amazing conversations going on. So look forward to seeing you in there. Also, a reminder to click on the shop tab and come get some of our merch. It's super fun and super easy to wear. Our premium members get free shipping every day. So just a reminder, another perk of being a premium member of Parenting Aces. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring Gary and Susan on. Hopefully I'm going to bring them on. This is always my hardest part now that we've switched over to using Zoom. There we go. Guys, if you could get your videos back on. I hope I did that right. Oh, here they come. Here they come. Hey guys, welcome Gary. I so apologize. After getting you to help me pronounce your name properly, I messed it up anyway, but hopefully you won't hold it against me.
Not at all. It was actually, you did it perfectly. So you're
good. Awesome. Well, it's great to see the two of you. I'm just so happy to have you both, and go Bruins, because Susan's wearing her UCLA hat and I'm a Bruin. So there you go. Gary, I want to start with you, and I want to talk about how you got started in the speed and agility training space. What inspired you to start working there?
It goes a ways back. I mean, my dad was coaching. My dad was actually my college coach in track and field. So he was a sprint hurdle coach in college. And I think for most kids going into college, you're kind of like clueless of what you're going to do in life. I was just wanting to do track only. That was like my main thing. I was going to college just for track. But once you get there, I found the love of coaching, got into the kinesiology department, and just, the prerequisites for college were rough. But once I got into the major, I just loved everything about biomechanics, the whole kinesiology, anatomy, physiology. So then I found the love of it, started coaching high school, had some success with coaching a lot of high school kids. And about that time my dad was coaching a guy named Byron Jackson, a guy named Derek Davis, which Derek Davis' name will come back into this. And so Byron's younger brother was Deshaun Jackson, who is now a 15-year vet in the NFL. So I started training him, my dad, when he was younger. And so I've been training him since he was 8 all the way through until to this day. So that kind of got me into the world of, coaching football, but also the love of, me and my wife running track. My wife was in the 2000 Olympics. I ran professionally for 10 years. And so and then starting Evo Sports Training, it's been about 12 years now. So I've been coaching for over 20. Kind of just led the foundation for just the love and passion of helping others achieve their goals.
So my listeners may wonder why I have a speed and agility coach on here who works with football players and who ran track. The reason is that you're now a tennis parent too.
I am. And my biggest thing as a parent was to expose my kids to as many sports, arts, whatever it is. I have with training sports, I have swimmers that I train. I have gymnastics athletes that I train for speed, because one of those things, the faster the speed, the bigger the vault, right? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff in other sports that ties into it. So to me, starting athletes and becoming a better athlete gets them to be able to go into their individualized sport, and coaches can coach them better. They're coachable better. The speed is everything in almost all sports. I can't think of a sport that doesn't hit home where speed can take you to that next level and be that difference maker in any sport. So that's kind of like what we've done. And then so my middle daughter, Sydney, was getting into tennis, and me and my wife like to play. And she took a love to it. And for a while it was just like once a week, and then she wanted to go more and twice a week. And then so I was talking to my friend Derek Davis, who we've known for a while, and his daughter played tennis and she worked with Susan. And so he's a big researcher. Like if you know him, he's researches everything to the stars and back. And so he did his research and found Susan and found great results. So he pointed me into the direction of Susan, and yeah, she's made leaps and bounds being with Susan. And even to this, like last night, she was at a little clinic out here, and you're like, man, her serve, like her technique is on point with that serve. And I was like, just like thinking, yeah, but thanks to Susan. So
How old is
yeah, that's
Sydney
how
now?
she just turned 11.
Okay. So that's awesome. And can you explain, Gary and Susan, I'm getting to you in one second, but Gary, can you explain what it means to train speed and agility? Because when I was a kid, we all just believed that some kids were fast and some kids weren't, and there was really nothing to do about it. It's just kind of how you came out. But the science has evolved, the research is there, and now the profession is there to actually train speed and agility in young athletes. Starting how young?
Yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people said you can't teach speed. Well, if that was the case, I'd be out of a job a long time ago. Now, don't get me wrong. I've told people before, you got to choose your parents wisely too, right? So there's that. There's the genetics part of it, but everybody can get better. I refer all my interns to the talent code, which is about training the nervous system, training the myelin in the body, and you can start very young. And I think doing it before your growth spurt, before puberty, it sticks in there a little better. And I think it's one of those things. It's a lot of correct mechanics, correct movement, correct technique at an early age. It's huge. But then also the speed aspect goes hand in hand with that, right? So it's just firing the nervous system, being able to explode, being able to go through certain ranges of motion. So all that has so many variables that help all sports.
And so you said it can start very young. How young?
Correct. I mean, I started my kids on doing stuff, and it can be as simple as balance stuff, like standing on one leg or learning how to hop on one foot. So it can start as soon as they're active, right? So as soon as they're able to do. So I would say, at the earliest, like 5 or 6. But I mean, I was having soon my kids can walk, like balancing on a 2x4, right? And just walk forward, walk backwards. And it's fun.
Right.
It's stuff that they can do. Like, okay, let's challenge you. Let's see if you can hop up on one foot up the whole stairs. So it's little things like that and one thing that me and Susan will always talk about is, for kids, you got to make it fun, and it's got to be the mental part of raising a kid into sports is huge. Also, I think a lot of people forget that part, and I think that's one thing that Susan does really well is connecting with the kid and having fun, but yet learning the proper stuff at the same time.
Right. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about doing with young children is stuff that used to just kind of naturally happen at the park or on the playground or when kids would play out in the yard. But that's not the way we live in most communities anymore, right? Our kids don't have that free play opportunity that we had growing up. And so now it needs to be a little bit more mindful. We have to really put some effort behind creating opportunities for them to learn these skills like balance, like hopping on one foot, like skipping. I remember even when my kids were starting school, they had to know how to skip to progress from pre-K into kindergarten. That was a prerequisite for being ready for kindergarten. I don't think that exists anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, well, I mean, if you know Sydney, she's very active. So she gets told all the time she can't run in the playground, right? So it's like, how you like, it's like this stuff that we used to take for granted back in the day, skipping. Like some kid used to skip to school, right? You used to run in the playground, used to play tag. Like I literally have to roll my eyes every day when we go and the teacher's there, like a monitor saying, no running, no running. Like why? Like, so yeah, it's one of those things where things have changed, or a lot of lawsuits happening, this, that, but I mean, just jumping from trees, jumping from, whatever, or riding your bikes for days on end, all that stuff is taken away, and parents are trying to specialize kids into their sports earlier and earlier, which is doing them a huge disservice of just learning to be an athlete, learning to be a kid, and learning to do just a lot of little different things, what we used to call being a kid. That's kind of like taken from them now.
Right. So Susan, you met Gary, you learned about what he does, and what was it about Gary that made kind of that light bulb go on for you that, hey, this guy could really help the young players I work with?
Well, like Gary said, we met through our mutual good friend, and as I jokingly call him, Grizzly Adams. I had to get that on video here. Derek, and because I'd given Lauren lessons and had worked with her until I had moved out of California and moved to Texas. And, Derek had opened my eyes to things, and I had been exposed to Randy Snow at the PTR conference. And I met Gary, and we just sit there, we'll talk and have these conversations, and we'll talk about tennis being little mini sprints all over the place with a break. And we'll talk about, what's going on in the movement and patterns. And, it's like, wow, when you look at Sydney, she's an athlete first and foremost, probably one of the most fearless 11-year-olds I've ever met. I mean, kid can get on a skateboard, on a scooter, and do all sorts of things. I've seen her in a squat down in Carson and hop up the steps in a squat, hop up the steps all the way up, hop up the steps all the way down, and just do that. And you're just like looking at it. It's like, whoa, that's a throwback. And you just, she picks up on things. I can challenge her to do something. And we've been working on beefing up her serve and things. She's an average size 11-year-old, and all of a sudden it's just like, whoa, because she's an athlete and she's done other things. And when you see her move and you see her looking to move forward and stuff, it's remarkable. And I'm excited because Gary has pushed me to be better at helping all my kids move, whether they're, the youngest ones, the middle-aged ones, which, Sydney kind of falls into that group, and helping the older ones get better at that skill, because everything is movement. You got to, you're stroking the ball and stuff, but you got to get to the ball.
So how do you now, Susan, incorporate the lessons that you're learning through your conversations with Gary and the lessons that you're learning by watching Sydney's improvement? How do you use that when you're working with young players that are just getting started in tennis?
I think it's just like the basic things like Gary has mentioned. It makes me realize, like when I do a transition between activities, sometimes I'll randomly throw in something like, we'll do what I call Kung Fu Panda, and we'll like do crane, and we'll be frozen, or we'll do some sort of movement to the next activity that I might have not normally thought of it, but I take these little moments and add something that I've learned from a conversation from Gary. It's like, okay, maybe I can do this, and then see where things are. And then I take mental notes, or depending on if it's a group or if it's a private, and take mental notes. Okay, this is this, or, we talk a lot because I'm asking him, because I've used, as you can see, my hats and my sweatshirt here. When I talk about the college girls that I know that I'm big fans of, what is he looking at, like where their strength is, where their weakness is, and how with kids that are Sydney's age or lower, younger, how I can develop better and better athletes with what I'm doing on the court to make them go beyond what's being done now and take them to a much higher level, and making it fun and making it engaging where they're like not realizing that they're doing so much more.
So Gary, is there an age at which it's just too late? You can't do it, can't get better, can't get faster, can't get quicker?
No, it's harder. That's really what
Yeah.
It's a lot harder. I mean, it's just like, a kid trying to learn, whether a kid or an adult trying to learn a second language. It's the same thing. We can do it. We don't have much patience, and it happens slower at a slower rate. And so it's harder. And then you also got to figure in, sometimes they've been having bad habits, whether, how they run. And like a lot of kids don't even know how to run properly. So it's like, if you're trying to chase down a ball, or, for football, same thing goes. The sprint mechanics have to be in sync, have to fire in the synchronization. And a lot of kids, and even I have guys coming out trying to get into the NFL, have not learned how to run. So my thing is, it's just always been trying to get kids to run properly at a young age. And it'll just, once they go through puberty and maturation alone, it's going to help so much just in the firing pattern. It makes it a lot easier for them.
What is running properly? What does that mean?
So
I'm sure I don't do it, but I'm curious.
Yeah. So it's the proper form, like good posture to begin with, right? And then when the foot hits the ground, there's this like firing chain from the glute on down. Now, a lot of people, especially in sports like basketball and tennis, where there are a lot in a like what they would call the athletic stance, which is a lot of bent over type of position. They're really quad dominant. So they fire the quad, which kind of takes off from the hamstring and the glute. And so then you end up not being able to run efficiently. So that's really what it is. It's learning how to fire the right muscles at the right time.
Well, and I know, especially as kids get older into their teen years and they become much more body conscious, we tend to exercise the part of the body that you see in the mirror, and we neglect the part that's behind that's firing and making us more efficient movers, not just athletes, but movers in general, right? Because nobody can see that part. So who cares?
Right.
And it's important to balance that.
Definitely. And then one of the biggest parts is the lower back that a lot of people, because a lot of people think, oh, the glutes have to be developed. And sometimes the hamstrings get avoided a little bit because, nobody really wants to see a big hamstring or whatever. But yeah, usually the hamstrings and the lower back are the two key parts that are usually the first to go.
Mm-hmm. So Susan, how has this changed what you're seeing in terms of the ability for kids to pick up tennis more quickly and develop good technique at a younger age?
I mean, as far as Sydney goes, who's a prime example, and even Lauren, their ability to pick up everything was just faster.
Do you attribute that to the fact that they developed all of these athletic skills before they became tennis players?
Absolutely. I mean, they're still, and Sydney's still in the process. But they're just able to do more faster because they're athletes first. And everything just picks up faster. I mean, doing the things that I was working on the serve, doing some of the stuff that I've learned from Lisa Dotson and from Sarah Stone, and being able to do that with a kid that was 10 just before she turned 11, and adding those kind of things. And I mean, comparing it to some of the other kids, she just picks it up, and it's phenomenal. And it really bodes to the point where, kids, tennis needs to be a part of their experience, but it needs not to be the only thing. And I think kids need to play tons of sports and become good athletes, and they'll choose whatever sport. Hopefully, as coaches, we do a great job, and they find their love and their passion for the game because they hook it up from us. But
Right.
I just want them to be good athletes and know how to handle competition and how to handle, the mental, emotional stuff that, all, both of our, our friend Frank Giapalo and others that we know talk about. And what Linda LeClaire talks about, the confidence switch and helping them do that. And I've noticed that these kids that are stronger athletes like Lauren and Sydney, have that confidence switch, that it's easier to ignite that. And it's made all the difference.
I love that, your point about how confidence is tied into athleticism. And, there's this ongoing discussion about early specialization and at what age do kids need to give up every other sport in order to excel at tennis or whichever their chosen sport is. And this debate just goes on and on and on. And what I've learned over the years, and you guys, I would love to hear your opinion on this, but what I've learned is it's not that kids need to compete in a bunch of different sports, but rather they just need to play at a bunch of different sports and pick up skills from basketball, from soccer, from football, from gymnastics, from, anything that they can do, even from playground play, picking up skills that they then bring to tennis so that it enhances their ability to learn the sport and to excel in the sport. Is that kind of where the two of you come from with that? Gary, you want to? Gary?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as far as, some sports start younger than others, like gymnastics, of course. But with the majority of the other sports, including tennis, I think for a lot of kids through high school, you could still be and even competitive in multiple sports. I think once you turn into, like, if you have certain kids who are turning pro in tennis at the age of 15, 16, then obviously you're going to be done. And you could probably, like you said, play in some other stuff when you're downtime and everything else. But sports like football, track, baseball, soccer, like all the way through high school, you could still be doing multiple sports, even 2 to 3 sports. I think that early specialization is just kind of taken over, and I think it's also a lot of coaches. I think for the lot of part, what I'm hearing is the coaches are making kids and parents choose at a young age, and so that's where I think coaches got to really look at themselves and they're like, are you doing the athlete a service or a disservice at that point? And I think too many times, too many egos, we just wanting to be like, if you run into a kid who's super talented, there's a lot of coaches who are always trying to keep them close and smother them. I've always said, like, parents can't be the reason their kid doesn't make it. You have parents trying to force these kids into, and I was just talking to my wife about it. She also is a coach she's the head coach at a high school out here in Murrieta. That a lot of parents and coaches think that there's a wide margin for error in coaching kids, and I disagree. I think there's a thin line, because there's so much mental and physical that goes into progressing kids and keeping it fun, and the mental aspect of just, if they get bored of something, let them be bored. Let them take a break.
Right.
That's what brings the love of, like, okay, it's like the heart grows fonder when you're separated, right? It's like the same thing. They feel like, oh man, I kind of miss it, and then fall back in love with it. Let them go through that process. But nowadays you're getting these parents who are like thinking and looking at their kid as the cash cow and being able to make it as a quarterback. And, I know guys have won national titles for Texas. He's never started as a quarterback in the NFL. But he's been a second stringer, but he's won the national championship. Like, it's like, don't fall into that role of thinking your kid's going to be the next kid. Let them have fun and enjoy the process.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we preach, for lack of a better word, here at Parenting Aces is really the goal of any youth sport, but, my area is tennis, is to come out the other side of this junior tennis journey with your relationship with your child intact, right? You want a good, healthy relationship with your kid. You don't want resentment. You don't want jealousy. You don't want regret. And so it is important to keep in mind that they're children first, then they're athletes, then they're tennis players. So, right. And you got to keep the priorities straight. Susan, what's your feeling about the early specialization and when kids need to make a decision that tennis is going to be their one and only sport?
I think parents specialize way too early. I think kids need to play a whole lot of stuff. I know me personally, I was a swimmer. I played tennis. My mom wanted me to swim, just so somebody would save her because she didn't swim, and so her baby would do that. And I played basketball, and I have a vertical about that big. And
me too.
and I did lots of things, and I ended up playing tennis. I quit swimming because I didn't like being yelled at by my coach. I had one swim coach that was great, and he went on to med school. And then the other one, I didn't like being yelled at. I had good basketball coaches, but then again, when your uncle's best friend is John Wooden, and you hang out with some of the best, you're a little spoiled.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have that later on. And so I kind of gravitated towards tennis. And then that was the fun, it was something I did with my father, but it was also the fun thing. And I honestly tennis wasn't my main 100% my main focus until I was about 14 and a half, 15. And I was going to go down to Saddlebrook and train, and through family circumstances and my father's cancer coming back, I decided not to go. And it was I made the best decision because I got to be home and spend more time with my father, which I have, which I'm glad I did that, and spend all that time with him. But it's interesting because the thing that I will tell you is, my son played tennis up until my youngest, until he was probably about 8. And then he came home one day and he said he didn't want to play anymore. I was like, okay. He'll still go out and help me on the court and stuff, but it wasn't his thing.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. It's fine. And, it's, a matter of fact, he's very supportive of my crazy adventure tomorrow that I'm going to do, but, going down to San Diego, but he's, the thing that makes me the happiest is when I coached high school tennis in, 99 and 2000, I'm still in contact with probably about 80% of my team.
Yeah.
Well,
that speaks to who you are as a coach, right?
Yeah. And, to me, it's the most important thing is that relationship with those players. And some of us, we'll talk on the phone, or one of them actually lives a couple of miles from me, and wants me to coach her kids, which is a high compliment.
Cool. Yeah.
One of them, we meet and we play pickleball and go down to the farmers market.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I don't mean to cut you off, Susan, but we're coming down to the last few minutes here, and I want to make sure I give both of you a chance to share your contact information with our audience. So people that are looking for information and a connection to someone who can train speed and agility, someone who understands as a tennis coach the importance of incorporating speed and agility training into their child's overall tennis repertoire. So Gary, let's start with you. What's the best way for our audience to reach you? Oh, you're muted. Gary, you're muted. Susan, I'm going to let you go while he unmutes.
There we go.
Let Gary go.
Okay.
We good?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it's with the unique last name. It's everything's under my first and last name. So it's Gary Cablayan. So it's Cablayan. So everything's under that. Have a website. It's under Evo Sports Training. It's EVO Sports Training. So that's it.
Awesome. And Susan, how about you? If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
Best way to find me is up at latennis.com. I'm the vice president of LA Tennis. Of LA Tennis. We have most of the concessions around the parks in LA. Also can reach me at tennistimeusa.com.
Okay.
All my contact information is up on there.
Awesome. And we'll have links to all of that on the show notes at parentingaces.com or wherever you're consuming this podcast. But I want to just thank the two of you for taking time to come chat with me. I'm really excited to follow Sydney's progress, Gary. I think it's Susan and I had a phone call offline, and she was telling me all about how much Sydney has grown in her tennis in such a short time. And Susan's take on that was the fact that she's such a great athlete that once you have those basic athletic skills, it's a little easier to kind of fine tune them, funnel them into a specific sport and learn the skills necessary for that sport, in this case, tennis, but certainly could translate across lots of sports. And that's why we see good athletes having success in multiple sports, right? They've developed those athletic skills first, and then they funnel that into the specific skills needed for a particular sport. So I'm excited to watch her. I hope I get to come see her play in person sometime soon. And Susan, have a great time. Go Bruins. I have to say it again because you're wearing your hat.
I think both girls are going to have a big tournament. So I'm excited to go down and be, as I call my role, the non-judgmental adult and number one fan that's not a parent. So there you go.
Love it. Well, thank you both so much. And to my audience, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.